everyone, my name is Amber and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be recommending 25 horror books to you for you to read in the spooky season. Like I said, there are 25 books here to talk about and I need to get through them as quickly as possible because I also have a thriller recommendations video coming up shortly that I need to record after this one. So like and subscribe if you want to see that from me, and let's get into the video. The first book I'm going to recommend is A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This is a book about a family who has a teenage daughter, and this teenage daughter is apparently possessed, and then a TV crew come along because that's what you want when your daughter is possessed, and they film the entire thing for a documentary. I really enjoyed this one because, like most of Paul Tremblay's books, it kind of leaves you questioning whether or not it's a paranormal thing or whether or not it's kind of like just teenage hormones that are causing the teenage daughter to act this way. And it was very much up in the air. I found this one very fast paced and I loved the questions that Paul Tremblay brought up, whether they were subtle or kind of in your face. So I'd highly recommend reading this book. The next book I want to recommend is another Paul Tremblay book, and that is The Cabin at the End of the World. This one is a little bit of a different vibe, but it still leaves you questioning what is real and what is not. So this one is about two dads who have a toddler. They're staying in a cabin, and one day a group of people show up and say the apocalypse has happened, we're here to save you. In order to save you, we have to kill one of you three. So obviously the two dads are like, there's no apocalypse, what are you talking about? No one's talking about this. And as the book progresses, you start to wonder if the apocalypse is actually happening or whether these people are just a bit nuts and want to go on a killing spree. Like I said, it leaves you questioning things at the end. I loved the ending of this one. I actually have a full review of this and I think it's quite old now, so go and watch it if you want to, but I very much enjoyed this one. The next one I want to recommend is Bella What Is Down by Rory Power. So this one is about a girl who has never met her mum's side of the family, or her dad's for that matter, and so she is fed up with her mother and goes off to find her grandmother. She heads off to her mum's little hometown and spooky things start to happen there. That's all I'm going to say about this one because it's one of those ones that are kind of surreal and leaves you questioning. But do know that if you didn't enjoy Wilder Girls, you might still enjoy this because it has a very different vibe to it. The next one is an old school one, but it's fantastic, and that is Cirque du Freak by Darren Shan. In fact, I recommend the entire series. The entire saga of Darren Shan is fantastic. It's about a boy called Darren who I think is 12 or 13 at the start of the book, and he goes to the circus, Cirque du Freak, and he runs into a vampire called Mr. Crepsley who is part of this circus act. It's a very short book, so I'm not going to describe much of the plot, but this entire saga is about vampires and, you know, Darren Shan as he becomes a vampire and then gets involved in vampire politics. And I honestly love this series. I would like to do a full reread if I can at some point because I got very, very attached to the characters, and also the stuff at the end was amazing. There were twists and turns and I was not expecting any of it. It was all very, very clever. And then we have 10, which is kind of an Agatha Christie style horror book. It's perhaps more of a thriller, but it's about a bunch of teenagers who go and stay in a house together, and one by one they start dropping off. Another series that I want to recommend is the Demon Artist series. This is also by Darren Shan. He wrote a lot of good series that I read when I was younger. So this one is specifically about demons and werewolves and all that kind of good stuff. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it is very, very good, and it's probably better for slightly younger readers. I feel like it's on the younger side of YA or the older side of middle grade, but it's very gory, so maybe not middle grade. It depends on how you're feeling, I guess. Then we have The Enemy, which is another series, but I haven't continued with this one. I've only read the first book, and that is a YA horror series about zombies, and I remember really enjoying this one because it was very fast paced and the zombies in it were quite scary, so I would recommend picking this one up. Again, I think this is one that's geared towards more younger readers than older YA, but it is very good. Bird Box, which is one of my all-time favourite horror books, and it has been turned into a Netflix movie, but that wasn't great, so let's not talk about that. It's about a main character called Mallory who lives with her sister, and then one day the news comes out that there's some sort of pandemic or something going around that's causing people to take their own lives, and it seems to be kind of a visual thing, so people seem to be seeing something and then losing their minds. People have to wear blindfolds in this world. You don't know what's out there. I find it very, very creepy because you don't know what's out there. You don't know what's causing this. Like, is it aliens? Is it something completely normal? Is it other people that are turning slightly mad? We're not sure, and by the end of the book it's still kind of unknown, which I love. I really enjoy open-ended books like that. It does have a sequel which I have done a full review for, which I will leave up above, but I didn't love that, so I would recommend reading Bird Box as a standalone. Lock and Key, which is a graphic novel series. This has also been adapted into a Netflix TV series, which was quite good, but it had a very different vibe. So this graphic novel series is very, very dark. It's about three children whose father is murdered, and they have to go and stay in their old family home called the Key House, and we follow them as they're experiencing the grief of losing their father and their mother's alcoholism. And also there's a really creepy villain called Dodge, who is one of my favorite villains ever. He is awful. This book, like I said, is very, very dark. I wouldn't recommend it for younger people unless you're really into that stuff at a young age, but I did very much enjoy this book. I love it. I think I gave all of the books either 4 or 5 stars. It's a 6-book series. I would highly recommend picking it up. Through the Woods, which is a graphic novel of short stories, and I'm not a massive fan of short stories, I'm going to say. So the fact that I really enjoyed this one and I'm recommending it says a lot about it. All of the short stories are horror short stories. They are super creepy. Some of them are a bit open-ended, but not in a good way. In fact, it's in a way that I had no idea what was going on. But despite not loving the short stories, I still really enjoyed the art style. Then we have Feed by Myra Grant, which is another old one, but I did enjoy it. It's about zombies. It's about a journalist during the zombie apocalypse, and I didn't love it when I first read it, but I do think it's something that I would really enjoy if I were to read it now, so I would recommend picking this one up. Eventually I will be carrying on with the trilogy. The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is about a boy who grew up in a graveyard with a bunch of ghosts. This is actually the only Neil Gaiman book that I have enjoyed, which says a lot about it. It's probably middle grade or younger YA, and it's very, very good, so I'd recommend picking this one up. The Diviners by Libba Bray. This one is set in the 1920s in New York, I believe, and it's about a group of people called the Diviners who all have these special powers and they have to try to take down the villain. I think it's 4 or 5 books long, and I haven't continued with the series, but I did enjoy the book when I first read it. It was a little bit long for my taste, but I really enjoyed the setting. The 1920s setting in New York City was very, very good, so I'd highly recommend it. The Name of the Star, which is kind of the opposite. It's set in a boarding school in London, and it has very similar vibes to the Diviners, and I think it came out around the same time, so I'd recommend picking up this one if you're into ghosts and want a UK-based ghost story. Ashes. This is another zombie book. This one begins right as the zombie apocalypse is starting. The main character is kind of in the wilderness by herself and then comes out and is like, what is going on here? Why are all these dead people walking around? And it's kind of more of an action thriller zombie book than a horror one, but I wanted to include it here because it is zombies. And then we have Anna Dressed in Blood, which is another old school YA horror book. This is about a guy called Cass who is a ghost hunter, kind of like the Winchesters, and the fact that he's called Cass kind of grated on me when I first read it. But anyway, he meets Anna, who is dressed in blood, who is a ghost, and he has to figure out whether or not to kind of get rid of her. The Loomis Dead, which is a book about a professional caver called Gaia, and she goes off into the caves on a planet and something is following her around. I've got a full review of this one coming up this week, so please stay tuned for that if you want to. Mexican Gothic, which I read recently. I did a whole discussion video on this with the Space Sirens book club. I will leave that up above as well. This one is set in the mid-1900s in Mexico. The main character goes along to this mansion which is owned by a British family because her cousin is married into the family and she sends a letter calling out for help. The main character goes to investigate, and then spooky things start to happen in this mansion, and that's all I'm going to say about it. It is very dark, very creepy. I didn't find it particularly scary, but I did really enjoy the atmosphere. The gothic vibe was spot on. Into the Drowning Deep, which is another Myra Grant book. This one is one that really scared me. I read it at the beginning of this year. It's about killer mermaids, which, as someone who is terrified of deep water and dark water that you can't see through, this book was scary, like really scary. So it's about a group of people go to the Mariana Trench and they are killed by killer mermaids, and then later on the sister of one of the people who died plus a bunch of scientists and monster hunters, they go along too to investigate what happened and to make a documentary. And then the killer mermaids attack and everything is creepy and scary, and I hated it, but I also gave it 4 stars. A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This one isn't your typical horror book. It's actually really, really emotional. It's about a boy whose mother is dying of cancer. At night he speaks to a monster who helps him get through his grief. It's kind of creepy, but it's also really wholesome, and it made me cry a lot. The Forest of Hands and Teeth, which is another old school YA one. This is actually the first book that I ever reviewed on my channel. That review isn't up anymore because I can't do that to you. I think I have it unlisted, so if you really want I can send you the link, but let's not. So this one is about a girl whose name I can't remember. She lives in a village in the forest and there are zombies outside, and the village is surrounded by a fence and also by the forest itself. One day the zombies get inside and the main character has to leave this place that she has lived for her entire life so far. Adventures ensue, and it's actually a really good book. Looking back on it, I probably would enjoy it more if I read it now than I did back then. I think back then I gave the first book 4 or 5 stars, and then the rest of the series only 3, but I definitely feel like I would like it a lot more now. The Grownups by Gillian Flynn. She normally writes thriller books, and I guess this could maybe be a thriller, but it's actually super creepy. It's a short story about a woman who, through various circumstances, comes across a really creepy child, and it really creeped me out. That's all I'm going to say about that one, because I don't want to give too much away because it is so short, but just know that it's really spooky and children are really creepy. Dreadnation, which I am currently reading and haven't actually finished. This is set in post-Civil War America, USA, and the main characters are zombie hunters. Then we have There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. This one is YA horror slasher kind of thing. In this book, teenagers are being killed off, kind of like Scream style, and Scream is one of my all-time favourite horror films, so this book was perfect for that. And finally we have Madman's Daughter, which is YA horror set on an island, and there are experiments going on there, kind of like Frankenstein kind of things, and it's super creepy. So I managed to talk about all of these books in less than 20 minutes. I'm super proud of myself. If you want to know more about any of them, I will leave Goodreads links to them all below. I'm sorry I didn't really go into too much detail, but just know these are my honest recommendations, and I hope that you can find something here that you would love if you want to check out some horror books. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll be back very soon with a review for the Loomis Dead and also my thriller recommendations, which is also going to be a long one. Thank you, bye.